If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to episode 20. On this episode, we speak with New Zealand author Rem Wigmore. So Diane, how's it going?
Hey, Alan, it's going really good. My book came out a few days ago, and it's,
Sweet.
It's not like breaking the bestseller list, but it's doing pretty well. I'm a little delayed on the print copy, so I'm frustrated with that, but, inevitable issues with formatting, these things happen, so those will be out. Well, by the time this comes out, they will be out.
You owe me one, so I'm waiting for it.
Yes, I do. I totally do owe you one because you supported the Kickstarter, and I thank you very much for that.
Of course.
That's awesome. So I guess right now, if people want to find it, I got one of those all the different retailers links, so you can find it at books2read, right, numeral 2read.com/a-few-good-elves. Figured since we were talking about the book, have to throw in the promo, right? So,
Yeah. No, you have to.
Yeah, so I'm very happy that that's mostly done, and, I've actually been doing pretty well at keeping up on fulfilling the Kickstarter. I've done all the digital distribution now, and it's just the stuff that's printed that I'm still waiting on. So, but soon.
Yeah. Man, that's got to be nerve-wracking and just keeping you insanely busy.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. How are things going on your end?
Well, I've got a wide array of information to share today. First, I'm going to start with a little bit of somewhat sad news. A podcast colleague here, Chris, who does our music, any music you hear in here that wasn't written by Diane was at least in part written by Chris and recorded and performed by Chris. And if everyone recalls our December episode, he was on there talking about music. Chris is in the hospital and has been in the hospital for a little while, and it's kind of serious. I'm not going to go into the details, but right. I just want to give a shout out to my man Chris, and we're thinking about you, buddy, and hope you get better soon. And you got a package in the mail coming to you, some good books to read while you're down and out. So just wanted to give him a shout out real quick. And happier news, though.
I hope it gets better quick.
Yeah, well, it sounds like things are headed back uphill, so you know what I mean? Or maybe that's the wrong metaphor. Things are doing better, is
there
what
you
I'm
go.
trying to say. When this episode comes out, it's going to be Halloween, and as we record, it is like we're moving into fall season here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about like spooky stuff. Have you been reading anything spooky lately, or anything to suggest maybe to our readers?
Spooky stuff to suggest. Let me think here. I haven't been. I have been reading again finally. Actually, if you haven't read it yet, which, I'm probably the last person in the community to have not read it until recently, I finally got around to reading James S.A. Corey's Leviathan Wakes. Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay, the TV show, everybody talks about the TV show. The book is infinitely better.
Wow. Whoa. First of all, let me just say that is one of my all-time favorite TV shows right now.
It's a good TV show. The book is better.
I believe it. The book is always better. And I'm actually hope to be reading that here before Christmas. So I'm super excited. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, there is some creepy shit going on there. It would fit the bill. So, they go more into the detail of some of the stuff. I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen the show or, whatever, but there's some very interesting things going on. And it's like, oh, that's disturbing. It gets into a bit of some of the stuff we deal with in science fiction. We usually approach it with an attitude of wonder, but there's also an element of scariness to it because it's so big and mysterious, and we don't really understand. And the fact is that most of the universe is very hostile to, well, life in general, never mind human life, right? So, yeah, it gets into some of that, and you feel the characters being way overwhelmed by the hugeness of the stuff that they're suddenly grappling with, and it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you know me, I always plan my reading out because I don't know, I'm just a planner, and that's the best way for me to do my reading for the interviewing and for reviewing and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm in the middle of reading David Mitchell's Slade House right now.
Ooh, okay.
As I was telling you before. Yeah. And it's pretty good so far. I don't know how he's differentiated as a literary writer as opposed to a genre writer or anything, but that's a whole nother conversation. It's been fun so far.
I've got a bit of a soapbox issue about that one. Literary fiction is just another genre. It's cool, but it's just another genre. It is not the height of fiction writing. It has its own genre conventions that its readers expect. Anyway, yes, I'll get off the soapbox now.
So I've got that one. I'm going to read the next in Charles Strauss's Laundry series. Let's see, for me, that one is The Nightmare Stacks, which I just think is a phenomenal series. I just love this series so much, and I've been reading it for years, because it's super long, and I just love it. Mexican Gothic is coming up on my list. Actually, Mexican Gothic is what I'm going to read before the Leviathan Awakes book. So
cool. I was interested in that one. Let me know how it is.
Yes, I am super excited to read that. And then I'm also going to read Haunting of Henderson Close by Kat Cavendish. So I think that's the name of the novel. Super excited to read that one too. That's from our friends over at Flame Tree Press. So,
oh yeah, cool.
Yeah. Every July, I think it's July, they have a $5 sale, and every book is $5, or a wide range of books is $5 anyway. And then so I'm I'll just buy 4 or 5 books, because whatever, it's $20 for 4 books, right? No big deal.
Right.
And so I've got quite a collection, and they publish, I would say they're 75% horror, and the other 25% is split up between science fiction and fantasy, right?
Yeah.
And so I have quite a wide array of horror from them. And hers is short, which I like. And I've had some discussions with her online before, so I'm really excited to read it and see where that one goes. So
awesome.
Yeah. So, okay. So, well, I guess we should probably bring our guest on. Huh?
I'm sure they are probably getting tired of listening to us yap and not...
Our listeners probably are too. Yeah. So when we come back, let's bring on our guest, Rem Wigmore. Hey all, you know that here at If This Goes On, we believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. Life is not a zero-sum game.
Aurelia Leo Publishing believes the same thing. If you haven't heard of them, they're a publisher that focuses on disabled, queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and other storytellers of color.
They intend to pursue their mission further with their new podcast, Aurelia.
Twice a month, Aurelia will feature reviews, interviews, and short fiction produced by or about disabled, queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and other storytellers of color, hosted by our friend Zelda Knight.
They are kicking off with interviews of N.J. Ember in a series of short stories by Edmund Schusel and Miko Rahala, published in the Infinite Metropolis collection.
If you want to hear more about disabled, queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and other storytellers of color, check them out at aureliapodcast.com. That's AURELIA podcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts.
And we're back. Today we have Rem Wigmore. They are a speculative fiction writer based in New Zealand. Their Solarpunk novel Foxhunt was published by Queen of Swords Press in 2021, and we will definitely be discussing that today. And their other works include River Witch and The Wind City, both shortlisted for the Sir Julius Vogel Awards. Rem's short fiction appears in several places, including Capricious Magazine, The Second Year's Best, and we practiced this word, and I'm going to mess it up anyway, Aotearoa. Okay, it's spelled Aotearoa. New Zealand science fiction and fantasy anthology. And that's Rem in the background laughing at me, just so you all know. And Victoria University Press's Middle Distance Anthology. Rem's probably a changeling, but you're stuck with them now. The coffee here is just too good. Rem can be found at remwigmore.com, and that's REMWIGMORE.com, or on Twitter as Fae Writer, FAE Writer. All right, so welcome on, Rem.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us your origin story. Like, I don't think we talk to many New Zealand writers here in the U.S., where we're based for the most part, or North America, maybe I should say. Sorry, Diane.
More accurate, thank you.
So we don't hear much about you folks. So, tell us how you got into writing and what brought you to this point right now.
Totally. Okay, so I was bitten by a radioactive quill. And then,
nice.
Awesome. That's
amazing.
Best answer we've ever had on that question. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I think pretty normal story, really. I grew up liking reading and stories like a whole lot, loved books. Started writing for fun kind of in my early teens, just kind of messing around a bit in like role-playing forums and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided I wanted to do this as my career when I was about 16 and set about trying to do that. Always loved fantasy best, and then other speculative fiction. Love sci-fi. I'm getting more into horror now, but I definitely wasn't when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't be like me, kids, but I did NaNoWriMo a lot, and specifically often because it was in November, it would often be at the same time as like our big exams, the NCEAs. So I did better at writing novels than doing my exams, unfortunately. But I did get my first book came out when I was 20.
Wow.
And
awesome.
since then I have been mucking around a bit. I worked in retail for a little while, and now I have my second book just came out from Queen of Swords Press, which is very exciting.
That's awesome.
That is really awesome. I'm a NaNoWriMo as well. And I think I legit got fired from my job for doing nano on my lunch break.
Oh no! But your lunch break that's your time.
I know, right? But yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, guilty as charged. So yeah.
Solidarity.
I feel you. That's right.
Wow, 20 is pretty young to get your first book published. That's awesome.
It was pretty young, yeah. There were things I would do differently now, but I'm still very proud of it. So that was my gentle little humble brag, I guess.
That's awesome. Yeah, and also, that's pretty common too. Yeah, it was good. I wish I, knew then what I know now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So wait, Diane, the novel that you just published, is that your first one or your second one?
It's kind of a weird yes and, right?
Okay.
Because
this is why I was confused. Okay.
Yeah, I did the Weird West stories as separate stories, and the first 6 were a complete story arc, so I published them as a single book, but I called it a collection, right? But it was like a complete story, right? And this is the first one I've called a novel, so I guess you could call that my debut, yeah. I'm 46, by the way, just, so it's never too late, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Or too early.
That sounds really good. I should check that out.
Thanks. I'm going to check out your stuff, too, here. I'm checking it out now. Your first novel here, River Witch, sounds like I would really like it.
Thank you. So my first novel was The Wind City, which is out of print at the moment, but that was under my old name because I am trans as hell. But River Witch came out last year, and you probably would like it. I don't know, you should buy it. Check it. Just buy it and see.
Yeah, as people who listen to the show regularly know, I'm a real life witch, right? So, I'm Wiccan, right? So I love that kind of stuff, right? Where you mix magic, and I don't know how much you actually based it on anything that, witchy types, people who call themselves witches in contemporary, our IRL people do, but either way, we all tend to like that kind of thing. And a lot of us like to approach it with tongue-in-cheek humor, right? So I don't know, but I'm interested. It's cool. It sounds fun.
Nice. Yeah. I tried to approach it like kind of writing basically that, like looking up what like practitioners believe and do. Trying to make it like so that people could read it and go like, yeah, I do that kind of thing.
Perfect.
And there's a whole range of different titles in the witchy fiction project that we did, and I know some of us are definitely like full witches or pagan as well. There's a whole variety of titles to check out.
I stumbled on that website when I was doing the pre-show research, so yeah, it looks great. I like the logo too. The logo is kind of perfect. It's cauldron, right, with smoke coming out of it, blue smoke and tentacles, right, and then by the cauldron they've got like this little a grinning skull and a little heart-shaped perfume bottle in pink. I'm like, yeah,
it's super cute.
So go ahead, Diane.
No, I was gonna say sorry for derailing you, Alan. Gotta carry on.
No worries. Here's how I think of us on the podcast sometimes. Like I'm the guy who calls the plays, right? If we were sports announcers, I'm the guy who calls the plays, and then you're like the color commentator. And
awesome.
I could just not be the color commentator. I'm just a terrible color commentator. You know what I mean? Where you're great at it. So I feel like, just do your thing, man.
Okay.
What I was going to ask about was we've had a lot of international guests lately, and we've been discussing publishing in all these different countries, right? And Diana is Canadian. I'm from the US. We've had Agena Chevway on, who was talking about publishing in Nigeria. We've had Francesco Verso on, who was talking about publishing in Italy. We had some Canadian guests also earlier in the year talking about publishing in Canada. So it's kind of been like this unofficial theme that just happened this year. And so I was going to ask you, what's it like to publish in New Zealand? What's the market like? How difficult is it to break in to bigger markets?
Do you think there's any unique challenges in trying to publish in New Zealand? Yeah.
Perfect.
Right, totally. Okay. All right, that's a lot of things, so I'm just like trying to sort of marshal my thoughts for a second.
Sure.
I think I have a fair bit to talk about all of that. So like the publishing scene within New Zealand itself is fairly vigorous, but largely leans towards literary fiction more so. Like a lot of the university presses mostly publish literary fiction. And there are a couple of like small presses or micro presses that publish more speculative fiction, the area I work in, but not very many. And
sounds a lot like Canada.
Probably a lot like Canada, yeah, except probably even like on an even smaller scale, I would imagine. So when I was trying to break in, my first publisher, I just saw their website and really liked what they were about and then just wrote my book to fit them basically, although I also wanted to write it. And that was Steam Press. And then I sent it in because it was a small press, so I could just like directly email, and then they read it and liked it, and then I just was published with them, which was very nice. And I liked the whole experience. But the thing that I would say about publishing in New Zealand is you kind of have to choose, right? Like unless you make it really big, you kind of have to choose whether you want to publish locally and then have your book in local stores maybe and have like your like friends and relatives be able to buy it, or you publish overseas.
Yeah.
And so I published locally with the Wind City, and it did, pretty good for a local New Zealand speculative fiction book. I got some good reviews and stuff. And then I decided I wanted my next book to be published overseas so I could try and break into the bigger market. And then I did not have a longer form work come out for like 6 years. And this isn't just because it was hard to break into the market. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I was struggling to like get the drafts of the many, many novels I wrote into like a standard that I found acceptable. But then when I did try to do it, I don't think it's like harder to query from New Zealand exactly. I know that like some authors, like local authors, have had a fair amount of success at it. I'm thinking of H.G. Parry, who wrote the Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep and A Radical Act of Free Magic and those kind of books. She's a local author and got like a traditional publisher, I think, just by querying the same process as like most traditional published authors. And I know a couple of other authors who have been able to get agents as well locally. Local authors who have been able to get overseas agents, right? Like the whole process of you query, maybe you cold query, maybe you do like a Twitter pitching event or whatever, and then you get an agent. But I did not have much success at it, which I don't think was a New Zealand specific thing. I think it's just hard. I had a fantasy western with dinosaurs novel that
Nice.
was the first thing I queried with. Yeah, I thought that's why weird western sounds like a lot of fun.
That's the other genre I write in. That's great. Right on.
Thank you. And I queried for like a year and didn't really like see many results. I only queried about like 30 people because this was while I was like working part-time, but like working 9 or 10 hour shifts at the supermarket I worked at and just going home so exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't like able to put in huge amounts of effort, but like I tried like the querying and trying to get an agent and it just didn't work out at that time.
I found that Weird Western can be a hard sell too, right? So
that would make sense.
You know, a lot of people still haven't even heard of the subgenre or know what it is. So it's coming. I believe it's coming, but it hasn't happened yet. So I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like it if it did. I'd
Me
like
too.
that. And then I had in 2017? Yeah, 2017 I wrote the first draft of Foxhunt, and then 2018 I wrote the first draft of the sequel, and then I was editing Foxhunt up, and I really wanted to get it published, right? And because it's this fairly topical book, because it's this like Solarpunk book that's very much speaking to the times we live in right now, I didn't want to mess around for a year querying and maybe not get anywhere, you know. Queen of Swords Press was open and I sent it to them, and then a bit later they were like, yeah, absolutely. So I was able to get that publisher overseas, like a small press publisher, but a very good one who I like working with a lot. So that was possible. So publishing within New Zealand, I think like it's not like you have the same kind of systemic barriers exactly that authors in some other locations would, but I don't think it's as easy as if you were like in New York, say, or America, where in normal times you'd be able to go to the conferences and like meet the people and rub shoulders. I think like it's possible, but it's maybe a little harder.
I think you're probably right there. Do you find that there are sometimes cultural things too? Like you wouldn't think there would be, but I've run into this as a Canadian trying to sell stories in the American market, and you know, stuff like, well, cops don't act like that. Well, they do in Canada, you know.
Yeah, probably a little. I don't think so much with my fiction specifically, but I think there's definitely some cultural stuff. I think like, I mean, the very fact that the English-speaking publishing world is so dominated by America is interesting. And New Zealanders often have kind of like, as a country, we have a lot of tall poppy syndrome, right? So like when someone seems to be succeeding, if they say that they're succeeding, we really like gang up on them and stuff. And it happens anytime we see a local author win like literary awards, for instance. And then if they say anything the least bit negative about New Zealand, they get like ripped to pieces in the press. And you see that with even just like Taika Waititi, who is a national treasure, and I love his work and I love everything he has ever said, probably. But people are like, he criticizes the racism we face, for instance, like the racism we have in New Zealand, and people are like, thinking he gets too big for his boots or something. I do think as creators, having the ability to do that hustle, having the ability to like speak about our work and also go for opportunities is a thing that culturally, like, not that it's like harder for us, but that like maybe we have to get over that mental block to be able to like shout from the rooftops the way you kind of have to be able to about your work. Like you have to get past that instinct to try and self-deprecate, because you can't do that.
We're like that.
You're marketing your product.
We're like that here in Canada too. It's exactly the same, actually. Yeah.
I've often thought that like New Zealand is Australia's Canada, basically, is how I think of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Very much
interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, like, you can also get published within Australia, and then that's like kind of, I guess, in between the local and overseas market, right? But I haven't really looked into that much what their publishing houses are like, but that is another option.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much the Australian and New Zealand markets overlap, because it seems like from way over here in the United States that would happen, but you know, maybe not. I don't know.
You would think so, but not all that much. I don't think. I think like we get a fair amount of books from Australia, I would say, like a decent moderate amount of that, but I don't know if it's the other way around necessarily.
Does New Zealand have its own science fiction and fantasy awards? I kind of make a point of reading stuff from the Aurealis Awards when I can, and I'm just interested if New Zealand has something similar, or if New Zealanders' work tends to get lumped in.
Totally. I think we've all been kind of hoping that maybe we'd be able to be included in the Aurealis Awards at some point, because I think that would help with work recognizability. What we have is the Sir Julius Vogel Awards, which is the local New Zealand award for recognizing excellence in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, speculative fiction works. And I have been shortlisted for that a couple of times, which is nice.
Awesome.
But not that many people know about the Sir Julius Vogel Awards.
No, I'm learning now.
There's also some stuff about the voting process and stuff. But I think that, honestly, looking at most awards, everything has something that's a little odd about it.
Yeah,
right. I am learning. But we have the SJVs. And I know actually one local author, Sasha Stronach, whose book, Sasha Stronach had the debut novel The Dawnhounds. And then at one point Sasha was tweeting about how the Dawnhounds won the Sir Julius Vogel Award that year and then got an agent, and now it's going to be a whole trilogy coming out from, I think, Saga. So
wow,
they do have some weight, which is nice. But we need to, because a lot of people just working in the genre don't necessarily know about them that much, although increasingly, thanks to the work of a lot of local organizers, people like Mel Harding Shaw, the amount of people who know about them is growing, and the amount of works that get nominated is becoming a larger pool, which I think is very good.
Awesome.
I've always wondered about, as an American, or I shouldn't even say that, as a United States person, I've always wondered about the relationship between Canada publishing, New Zealand publishing, and Australian publishing, and how that works exactly, because I don't know, from my perspective, you all seem more similar just in, I don't know, just in culture and stuff than the United States, where we get some stuff from Canada and we get some stuff from the UK. We don't really get anything from Australia, or very, 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 very little, and almost nothing from New Zealand. I mean, you're the first New Zealand author I've knowingly read. I'll say that.
Aw, that's kind of nice. I think I'm the first New Zealand author someone's read. That's you're the first. You know what I'm saying? That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, as a Canadian writer, I'd say that there's an argument for that, right? I do think that culturally we probably have more in common. There are some things there's this thing called the Commonwealth Award that's for writing in the different Commonwealth countries, but it's pretty much dominated by literary fiction. You're not going to get anywhere with a genre piece, right? So there's some talk about creating kind of an EU sort of relationship between some of the various Commonwealth countries, but there's also a lot of justifiable criticism about racism being part of that, because for some reason nobody wants to include India, and I don't know why you wouldn't,
Yikes.
So it's I hope that gets sorted out, because it's something I would like to see, but not if they're going to maintain, it's usually the racist types who are the most vocal about it, and therefore that makes me suspicious and not want to support it.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool if it was if we were able to get a version of it that was not horrifically racist.
Right.
Yes, if we were able to get a version of it that wasn't terrible, that would be pretty cool, because then it would be easier for Americans or other people wanting to read outside of their normal market to be able to look and go oh, here's this curated list of all of these things. It would help us all punch above our weight a bit more.
It would.
I think.
I agree completely. Yeah.
Like a union.
It makes me wonder about things like the FIA Awards, you know what I mean? Which they had their first year last year, and it was just freaking huge. I think I heard more about that than I did at Hugo's, which is kind of crazy, honestly.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, the Ignite Awards, they've only existed for a year, but already it has joined the list of the awards that I want to be nominated for one day. It is.
Yeah, they're doing awesome work. Yeah.
They're so cool.
Okay, so since we're talking about awards, I'm going to sneak this question in, but then I promise we're going to talk about your book next. You all had the Hugo Awards there in 2020, so
yep.
I'm sure you have some carefully considered opinions. What did you think about that?
Yes, I have some carefully phrased opinions that will delicately walk the tightrope between being candid and brave and between being not too controversial. So first of all, it was a big disappointment, right? Because we'd been really looking forward to hosting WorldCon, because yeah, I guess that's the thing that I didn't like fully mention or like cover when I was talking about publishing in New Zealand. Is like you can't just go to WorldCon. WorldCon is like, that's thousands of dollars for the plane tickets. You can't do that. So that was why it was really exciting to be bringing it here for once. And then of course, all the unpleasantness occurred, and it went virtual, which was a pretty good pivot, I think. Like, I think overall the move to virtual was done quite well. And then there were the Hugo Awards. Yes. They were certainly a time. My memory of the Hugo Awards is sitting in a room with the other local New Zealanders, because we had, we'd done all our quarantines and our level 4s and all that. So we were able to gather in a room again, which was nice. And then just watching them happen. And we were all very, there's articles you can read about this online. The one I'm thinking of, I think there's one called something like How New Zealand Fiction Got Shafted on a Global Stage. A lot of people were excited because part of WorldCon was meant to be, like, we weren't having our national convention that year, right?
Yeah.
Like, we weren't having our little NatCon. So, like, it was folded up in that. And the national convention is when those Sir Julius Vogel Awards get awarded. So a lot of people very rightfully got very excited that their work was going to be, like, available to this huge voting pool, right? This huge overseas audience, like, that they could potentially break into. But then there was a lot of criticism about how it wasn't really publicized to a lot of the WorldCon attendees and how they didn't get access to the voting packet and all that stuff. And then on the day of the awards, I can't actually remember. I think the Sir Julius Vogel Awards, I can't remember if they happened before or after the Hugo Awards. But I know they were kind of lumped in with the retro Hugos, which nobody liked that happening. That was not nice. It was like, okay, so no one's going to watch these. No one's going to, like, actually learn about the speculative fiction from the country that we're meant to be doing this convention at, right? A lot of people were not happy about that at all. So that was kind of the energy, I think, that we were going into the Hugo Awards with. And then that whole thing happened.
The speech, you mean? You're talking about the speech.
The speech. I would even say speeches. I would say maybe speech, because it was very long and drawn out and did not need to be.
Yeah.
And then the contrast between that and the Ignite Awards was just like, wow. And just the lack of respect and, like, not trying to learn, like, finalists' names and all that when they definitely had sentence pronunciation. It was just infuriating. I just wanted to be able to, like, cheer for my friends and heroes and peers in the speculative fiction community, which I did do, which was nice, but it was also, like, wincing the whole time. This is meant to be this big thing, right? Like, the Hugo Awards, it's the Hugo Awards. It's one of the biggest awards in speculative fiction, but it was not a thing of respect. It was not a thing of dignity, and it should have been.
So, like, in the last, I don't know, probably 5 years, I've taken my fandom to the next level, starting podcasts and doing podcasts and interviewing people and going to conferences and all this stuff. So 2020 was, like, the first year where I was like, I'm gonna be a WorldCon member, and I'm gonna watch the presentation and the awards and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, super excited about it. Yeah. My wife's like, okay,
I'm so excited.
You go do your geek stuff. That's cool. I support you in your geek stuff. I'll give you time to watch this. You know what I mean? Like, okay, awesome. I'm so excited about it. And it was like the afternoon for me. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon or something like that. And so I'm sitting there and watching it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm so excited. Oh man, George R.R. Martin, that's so cool. And then he just starts talking and they start talking about, like, I don't know, Robert Silverberg or something. I'm like, okay, well, he's an old guy, okay. And then they
did racists.
Yeah. And then they presented the award, and then you start talking again. I'm like, oh man, like, is this gonna keep going like this? And then and then he mispronounced her name completely, and I'm like, come on, dude, that wasn't even, like, a hard name. Like, I could have guessed how to pronounce her name correctly. What was that? And it just downward spiral. And, like, I come out of the room 15 minutes later, like, all pissed off. My wife's like, why aren't you watching your thing? I'm like, it's just a fucking shit show, man. I'm embarrassed. And I will just straight out and say that. I was like, fuck. And I just shut it off and was like, I'll just follow it on Twitter in between doing other things. And
smart.
It was such a letdown from my perspective. So I can only imagine what it was like for you folks down there.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I'm going to, I think perhaps. Yeah. I saw the reaction on Twitter afterwards. that was, and then I kind of thought to myself, gee, I'm kind of glad I didn't see it, because this would be awkward. So, yeah.
It was just like, that feeling, I don't know, when you're excited about something and it just goes horribly awry and your heart sinks into your stomach and you're just like, what? Like, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't what I thought, you know? And
I was looking forward to it so much, right? Like, that's one of the things I was really excited about with WorldCon is like, okay, people are going to be coming here. I get to like, I don't know, meet these overseas writer friends and show them around. That's so cool. Maybe I'll get an agent somehow and maybe I'll meet George R. R. Martin. And now I'm like, well, I no longer want that.
Oh, Lord, yes. I understand completely. And then I have to bridge this gap between my friends who casually like science fiction and fantasy.
Yes.
And hardcore friends. And my in-depth understanding of everything, right? And they're like, yeah, George R. R. Martin, blah, blah, blah. He's so awesome. And I'm just like, no, dude, no. No.
Yeah. Yep.
But then it's kind of like, do I really want to talk about this again for the millionth time? You know?
Yeah, it's so much whack.
Yes, it is so much whack. Exactly.
I have had fun info dumping.
Having not seen it, right? I will say this. I do think it was pretty, okay, aside from whatever else, which, yeah, all right, fair enough, that's ugly and right? But I also think it's pretty cool that he still is hanging out with us in the genre ghetto a bit, even if he's not doing it well. I don't know, but he doesn't have to, right? He doesn't need us anymore,
That's true. That is totally true. He doesn't. And I have the same, I kind of go back and forth a little bit too, where I'm like, well, like, he's an old guy and, he's at the peak of his career and he, like you were saying, he doesn't need to hang out with us, but also he could kind of try to show some respect for the rest of us, because being an old guy and being at the peak of your career and not needing us, you kind of need to realize that, like, the fandom's not for you anymore. You know what I mean? I feel like, anyway.
Yeah.
There's a thing that I've noticed at the, small smattering of conferences that I've gone to here in Canada and whatnot. And I think part of it is part of the culture is a bit of a problem, right? I've noticed that the people who actually get their names on bestseller lists, aside from the science fiction community, people follow them around like groupies and hang on their every word. And that's never a good recipe. You've got to have people who are going to take you down a peg.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, then you stop self-correcting, right? And I've seen it here even in Canada.
And I would call out Margaret Atwood on that, because I've heard so many bad things about her personally, which sucks, because she's awesome.
Margaret Atwood is an amazing writer, and I'm proud that she is doing Canadian writing proud. But I understand the perspective. One big chip on my shoulder I have is her desire to divorce herself from the genre ghetto, right? And her unwillingness to cite her sources, right? She claims that these things are, well, this could really happen and it's so new. And I'm like, okay, no, right? I've read enough dystopians to have seen almost all of these themes. And the Mad Adam trilogy was The Island of Dr. Moreau combined with Earth Abides and Death of Grass, right? So, and I dislike that. I there's nothing wrong with borrowing from those who have come before you. We expect that. That's great. But I think it's only fair to shout them out when you are asked about it, and not try to claim that you conjured this brilliance out of your head instead of the cultural soup that we're all raised in, which of course we are inspired by these things that we read and pick up, and of course there will be similarities to other things. And I don't know, maybe it's this whole obsession about copyrights these days that's causing the problem. Maybe people don't want to admit, yeah, I got this idea from X novel because they don't want to be sued. I don't know if that's the case, but it's a real shame. I think that it would be better if we all just kind of realize that we don't live in a vacuum and go, oh yeah, and I read this, great book and that great book, and that's part of what inspired this. So, you should go read these books.
Yeah.
I think you should do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in here. I'm gonna say let's use that to segue.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Foxhunt for a little bit.
Yay!
Yes.
Rem, what were your influences for Foxhunt? Because it's Solarpunk, it's Hope Punk, and it's just got like so many interesting things going on. Well, let's start there. What were your influences for this book?
Totally. Okay, so I'm inspired by a whole lot of other like fiction writers and speculative fiction writers. One of the main influences for Foxhunt, though, wasn't like written fiction. It was like this a podcast. It was the Twilight Mirage season of Friends at the Table, which is an actual play tabletop role-playing game podcast. And the things that really inspired me in that were like this, it has this like very far future setting, and it's this very mostly utopian setting, but then also like looking at the failures of utopia. And the thing that was unique about that to me that I hadn't encountered previous to this, which is not to say that other people haven't done it, was looking at the failures of utopia without just going like, oh, it's a dystopia, really. It's actually just grim and horrible. There is, it's the ones who walk from Omelas. We can be trying and doing that work and still have things we need to work on. And that was very, very, very inspirational for me. So that kind of like went into my head and just kind of jumbled around with all these other ideas I had about wanting to write about like tricksters and these characters that I had, and wanting to write a hopeful setting, wanting to write a far future setting, wanting to write a version of the Earth that isn't dead, basically, because we need to be able to envisage that kind of future before we can work towards it. We can't work towards it if we can't see it, right? So there are a lot of influences. There's a lot of Solarpunk books that I've read like more recently that weren't influences exactly, but that I'd consider the book to be sort of in conversation with because they address some similar stuff. I'm thinking of Game Changer by Alex Beckett and the climate fiction novel, what's it called? It's so good. Blackfish City.
Oh, Sam Miller.
Yeah, so cool.
City.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, too. I've interviewed him a few times, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Great guy. And great novel. I love that novel. And I just got his new one, his horror novel. I can't wait to read that either. That's on my list.
Can't wait to
Probably
read
won't get to it this year.
Yeah. So it's in conversation with that kind of work. And it's like, although it's not like directly inspired by like other books, it's very much still coming from, I don't know, the traditions that I'm writing from, which is the kind of thing that I was reading like as a teenager and that like really filtered into me. Although it's a science fiction novel, it's got a lot of kind of the feeling of like this epic fantasy, like this rich, almost pastoral setting. So it's like kind of got influences from The Name of the Wind, Pat Rothfuss, and definitely a bunch of other stuff.
No, that's great. That's great. I love what you're saying about having to envision the future, because that's kind of one of our goals here on the podcast is to, create a better future by talking about how the future can be better and creating a sense of hope and supporting authors who also are interested in those things, right?
Yeah.
So
I like your approach. I don't think we're in a time where people are willing to believe in utopias.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to show that there will be things that will still have to be worked on, and there will be unforeseen consequences of any changes that are made. I'd hope that the lessons of the past 2 centuries has taught us that much, at least.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're approaching it from that point of view, but being optimistic, I think that's a great thing.
Thank you.
I'm reading the description, right? The blurb here, or the synopsis of Foxhunt, and this sounds like my thing. I really, especially when you're talking about how it's got the feel of epic fantasy, but it's definitely science fiction. I love that kind of stuff where it kind of hovers on the boundary. I like to write in that area, and I love to read in that area, and this definitely sounds like something that I should pick up. So,
thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your magic system a little bit.
Absolutely.
So you have, I like how you did it. So Just to explain to the audience, so basically some people have what they call the blood, right? And that kind of gives you some magic powers. And so the main character in the story is able to like cast illusions, sort of, to some degree, right? Use like some electric powers, I think a little bit of fire, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah, fire. Right. That's actually a main plot point, actually. The fire. And do a couple, she's also able to heal herself, right?
Yeah.
But it's also kind of a mix of magic and technology. And I just thought you did such a great job of kind of sort of explaining it, but not coming up with this super detailed system. So like, what were you thinking for that magic system, and where did all that come from?
Right, thank you. Okay, so I'm trying to decide how much I want to call myself out here, because like partly what I wanted was like kind of that magic system that's like very much the kind of thing you get like in role-playing games or some video games and such, where it's like you have that kind of like, you have your cool character who can like throw fireballs and has like a sword and can heal herself and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that was like the influence for how I wanted it to feel, how I wanted like what the vibes I wanted to be. And then I was like, okay, and then it was also like this kind of cyberpunk influenced setting in that kind of, it's the Solarpunk setting. It's like 800 years from now, but there's a few like locations and a few characters where it makes it plain that's like what the technology level is. So I was like, okay, nanites, gotta be nanites. Mm-hmm. And then we do have a character who studies that and like checks up on like Orpheus's, that's my main character, Orpheus. This character checks up on her levels of nanites in her blood, but like it's not necessarily explained. And some parts of it are fairly plausible, I think, like being able to have nanites generate electricity is a thing that I think is like reasonable. And then some stuff, of course, is much more just like hand wavy. And it's like, well, it's 800 years from now. They can figure it out.
Any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic. Yep.
Absolutely. And like they call it magic, and they're also like, well, it's nanites, but
Thank you, then, that they call it magic. You know, nothing pisses me off more than when you're reading a future description of something and they're like, oh yes, it's a walking corpse, and they come up with some name for it, and you're like, okay, come on, this was our world. They're gonna call it a zombie. You know, come on.
Yes.
So if it looks like magic, they're going to call it magic. Obviously. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. A mix of different things, and like a lot of the technologies and a fair amount of the like societal changes I wanted to be plausible. So like I did the research, and it's like, here's how we have these solar panels. Here's how we have these, like, here's what the fields look like. They don't eat meat very often. Here's this. They eat mostly like local food. They trade for stuff that they need. No one drinks like coffee or like, Camellia sinensis style tea, because like it doesn't grow in that climate, all that. And then also because I like having fun and I like being joyous, she can shoot fireballs, and there's flying motorcycles, and it's good. It's great. Awesome. You can just do whatever you want when you're writing a book. Did you know that? It's fantastic.
You can. I know, you have permission. Yes. Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely picking this up now. That's great.
I do like how you mentioned the tea thing, because you do spend some time talking about like the ways that they have changed their culture in order to be better for the environment. Yeah. Trying to buy locally, for example, is one thing. Yes. I think, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you. Carry on.
Oh, okay. I think their only energy source was solar. Is that correct?
Pretty much. It's very much this emphasis on like sustainability and sustainable types of energy and like ways of living and being alive that don't hurt the world, basically, but not like in the self-flagellating way, not like, oh, we are the disease. Like, we are a part of the natural world, so we need to be in harmony with it, but we are a part of it. We have a right to be here. We just need to be like respectful of this place and think of our ancestors and think of our descendants and think of what world we're leaving. And that's very much how I approached the world. So it was actually very refreshing to write a world where that's just like taken for granted as like a moral value, I guess. And like there's ways of enforcing that moral value, which Orpheus stumbles into, but just that being a core part of the world and the ethics of that world was very refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. At one point you write, and I'm just going to read a little bit real quick here. We averted the end of the world, how grand and how terrifying, that we had such a capability and that it was ever so close to come to pass. We learned the things we must never do again. We learned that we must brave Be brave and clever and kind, structurally and inescapably kind, or the world will once more be in danger of falling. Communities and countries and people must stand together and try. Never again can a few elites ride at the top of the world and grind others into the dirt, leaving them little choice but to dig in the ground for poison to burn. And you go on for a couple more paragraphs in a similar manner. Yeah. And I read this and I just was like, yes, I love this. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm generally looking for, when I read political science fiction or fantasy, right? And I'm wondering, you've got in here, never again can a few elites ride at the top of the world and grind others into the dirt, right? And I'm looking at your system. They have generally a barter system as well throughout your book. How much did you think about economics while writing this book? And I mean, are you trying to comment on things, or is it just a natural outcome of what you were writing?
Oh, I'm big trying to comment on things. I'm very anti-capitalist. I am specifically... Yeah, I can say this. Specifically, I have often had the thought Orpheus would eat Jeff Bezos' heart in the marketplace, because it's just a very catchy thought that I like a lot. It's very anti-capitalist because I'm very anti-capitalist. It's very explicitly anti-billionaire. It's the people who, so there's this bounty hunter organization-ish called the Order of the Vengeful Wild, who are basically eco-terrorists, right? But vigilantes, but kind of socially accepted ones because they keep people in check. And the people they come after are energy criminals. So people doing the kind of environmental harm that often big companies in our present world do and that our legal infrastructure hasn't caught up to yet, that it doesn't recognize as a thing that we need to keep in check. So that's one of the types of people they come after, but the other one is resource hoarders. So it's very much to get to this better world, we can't have billionaires. We can't have people sitting on huge piles of wealth when other people are going hungry. And as I kind of get at in that snippet, being forced into these dead-end situations and these occupations that aren't necessarily helping the world because they have to eat, because they have to live, because they want their children to live. We need to be able to reallocate these resources. We need to all band together. We can't have people sitting at the top of the stack upon unimagined hordes of wealth and just letting other people go hungry and letting the world burn. I realize I have been ranting about this for a couple of minutes now, but it is a thing I feel strongly about. It is a very explicitly political
It's kind
novel.
of wonderful that our guests are doing that instead of us, actually. So that's awesome.
Yes.
We're with you.
That's
We're
good.
with you, 100%. Let's just say that.
It's kind of imagining a world, imagining one way for people to be held accountable. And I'm also I'm big into prison abolition these days. So I don't believe in carceral justice, but I don't think that people should just be able to run around poisoning the world for profit either. So kind of the middle ground between that, just imagining various ways that we can address that is one of the things I'm doing in the book.
Great. No, I think it's great. We are coming close to the end of our time here. So I want to ask you one more question about the book, and then we're going to ask you the closeout questions that we ask everybody else. Okay, one last thing I want to touch on about the book. So let's talk about pronouns for a second.
Hell yeah.
You use the widest variety of pronouns I've ever seen in a book, ever. You use he, she, they, but also V or they. I'm not.
I always pronounce it V, them, ver is that pronunciation, I think.
Okay, and then you also say XE, so they?
Z, I think, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Z, they, yeah.
And even more fascinating than that, you've got this character, Wolf, right? Or Foul, I don't know how you pronounce his name either. Fail?
I've looked it up, and I think it's something like Foil.
Foil? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got Foil, which also changes to Foilin.
Yeah.
But and you just change it kind of whenever.
Yeah.
But you also change the pronouns, and this character is referred to as he and she, sometimes differently, even in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
Which, reading it, I was like, I mean, it took me a second to understand what was going on. But once I understood what was going on, first of all, it didn't bother me for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
So, for anybody who would say that would bother them for the rest of the book, it was well done, and I had no problem following anything. But I have never seen anything like that. And I want to say that is awesome, A. And first of all, what is your inspiration for that? Which I think probably has already been partially answered. But also, how did you, especially with that character, decide which pronouns to use? I'm just gonna stop there. How did you decide which pronouns to use for that character?
Okay, so the first thing, what was my inspirations for it?
Yes.
I really, really wanted to write a world where we live, where we're in it. That's the thing about like post-apocalyptic fiction, right? Which this is also like not quite is, but is very in conversation with, is like the kind of characters who get to be in post-apocalyptic worlds, and it's like it's never trans people and it's never disabled people, so a very important thing to me was to represent the whole wide range of humanity, except a little bit skewed towards my like specific areas of interest. I don't think there's like a straight character in the entire book. There's not a cishet character anywhere in it, and it's a majority trans cast. So like I'm non-binary and I consider myself trans, and a large amount of my like friends and loved ones are like trans or non-binary, and then also a lot of like authors doing this work, writing speculative fiction that I respect and look up to. Also that I'm very pleased to hear that it's like got the like one of the widest range of pronouns you've seen in a book. That's extremely nice to hear, and I am very glad. Some authors who were doing some similar stuff is there's Bogey Tegax, pronounced that last name badly, should have looked it up. Just carrying on. And Bogey has like a lot of work with that. R.B. Lemberg explores gender a whole lot in their work and is a massive inspiration on me. There's one of the magazines I'm in actually, there's the Capricious Gender Diverse Pronouns issue, which has like a huge range of like neo-pronouns and other cool stuff. So that kind of work is the work I'm drawing on, but I really, really wanted to have a world just jammed full of like a whole variety of trans and non-binary people, because I want to see us in fiction, and I want to see people like me in fiction having adventures and having this whole wide range of like morality and motivations, and that was vital to me. Okay, so when it comes to the wolf's pronouns specifically, that character is gender fluid, or is mentioned as being gender fluid at one point by another character. We never actually hear it from him specifically, but at one point Orpheus is like, so what are your pronouns today? And he's like, he, him, and then after that, the narration just sort of refers to her by he, him, or she, her pronouns interchangeably, because those are her pronoun sets. I would be interested in hearing like if any like gender fluid people have any takes on this. I am very happy to hear them. I want to do it well and present this character accurately, which I hope I have done. But if I haven't, that just means I can do better next time. But I basically just, I kind of just went with what felt right in the moment. So I alternate pronouns for that character a lot, kind of just like by what feels right in the sentence. And in book 2, because I'm editing book 2 at the moment, I'm having it like a lot more systematic, like he for like a few paragraphs, and then she for a few paragraphs, and then so on. And then partly, I'll be honest, sometimes Foil is he, him, because Orpheus is the other character in the scene, and I don't want to be confusing about which of them is using which of them like a she, her pronoun refers to, which is
that's fair in the current climate,
just like
right?
just in terms of like
fair.
Readability of like paragraphs is what I mean, just like knowing which character it refers to. But I've conquered that a little bit in book 2, but that's just a peek behind the curtain. But yeah, just wanting to like show this aspect of this character's identity, I guess, just being like another thing about him is what I was after. From
the perspective of someone who, I guess the closest thing to what I identify with is demigirl, right?
Hell yeah.
She, they. And it's, for me, it's more a matter of, I don't have anything against she, and this is what I look like, and this is how I am perceived, but I'm not attached to it either, right? I personally would really like it if people would interchange she and they when referring to me, and I've started doing that in my bios now.
Nice.
Right? So I like that, if you want my personal perspective coming from that angle.
Absolutely. No, I very much value that perspective. Thank you. I'm glad what I'm always hoping, is that someone will read the book and go, oh, this is so nice. Oh, this is so refreshing. Someone like me, or like I would do that, or like that kind of thing is always the goal,
Awesome.
Yeah. I just found that so fascinating that you were able to do that and pull it off. It seems like it would be hard to pull off readability wise, you know what I mean? But it wasn't. It was totally fine.
Hell yeah. I'm really glad to hear that.
and then you, like I mentioned before, Foilin and Foil, you kind of interchange those, and I perceive that to be the the male and female versions of that same name. Is that correct?
No, the name thing. The name is it's actually just two names that the character like. It's just the character's name and a variation on the character's name. It's not like
a nickname. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like tied specifically to like what gender presentation or feeling she has at that time. But it is very interesting that it might come across that way. That is interesting.
Huh.
I just like characters having a lot of different names, I think. But that is a thing that would be the case for a fair amount of gender fluid people, I think. So like that's not an unreasonable assumption at all.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So I'm not totally crazy. Good.
You're fine.
And you said there's a sequel coming out?
Well, there's a sequel that's with my publisher. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Touch wood. Hopefully. It's called Wolfpack.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
I hope it comes out. I think that would be great.
Well, you've definitely been getting some buzz because I've been seeing it all over the place, and so
that's really good to hear. I hope it does well, not just because it is my book and I love it, but also because I think it is a useful thing in the times we live in, and I think it will be a nice thing for people to read.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so we said we would get to horror books. Okay, so before we had Rem on, I told them that this is going to be coming out in October, so maybe have some horror suggestions. So I'd love to hear what you thought up.
Totally. So I never used to be that into horror, but then I got recently I got big into gothics. And I lay the blame or the commendation for this squarely at the feet of the novella Yellow Jessamine, Caitlin Starling's novella Yellow Jessamine, which came out from Neon Hemlock Press. And I loved that novella a lot. It's very creepy. It's very gothic. It's full of like weird plant shit, which I'm all about. Some other like horror or dark fiction things that I've read recently include Butcherbird, which is a supernatural suspense novel by Cassie Hart, who's a New Zealand author, and it's full of creepy birds and like rural farm life and also like strained family relationships, but also like trying to mend them, which was very refreshing. And it's also very chilling at times. And then I also recently read Beneath the Rising by Prami Muhammad, which is
oh yes.
Yeah, that sad friendship cosmic horror book, which was also very fun. So it turns out I do actually like horror. Just like these very specific subgenres of it.
I just recently loaned Beneath the Rising to my mom, and I have not read it yet. Because my TBR pile's insane, right?
I feel you.
And so I just loaned it to her, and she came back to me, and she said, "This is the weirdest book I've ever read in my life."
Absolutely.
I was like, "So good?" She's like, "Yeah, it's very good, very good." I was
yeah.
Like, I'll get you the sequel, Mom.
The Eldritch stuff is very good.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I can't wait to read it. Okay, so next question is like our closeout question. This is the question that we ask to everybody. What gives you hope right now?
Oh, man. What gives me hope right now?
Common reaction. Don't worry.
A few different things. I'm very inspired like by the scene we're in at the moment, by like being in this career at like the same time as all of these current things are happening, because like despite the kerfuffle and the unpleasantness that happened at the last year's Hugo Awards, looking at like the actual like looking at the winners and the nominees, it's like one of the most vibrantly diverse groups of authors and creators to be recognized by that formal setting for like a hugely long time. So it's like people like us and people like them have been like working in this field for ages, but like there's finally some recognition of that, and being part of this and like producing work at this beautiful time in publishing is just a sincere joy to me that I'm very excited by. I'm so honored I get to be part of this conversation, basically. And the other things that give me hope are just my friends and my loved ones and the people I get to spend time with. I like being around them. I think that is a vital thing. To have loved ones in this world, to have people you can be safe around, like that is such a good thing to have. It's important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so where can we find you on the web, and what projects do you have going on right now?
So you can find me at remwigmore.com or on Twitter as @favewriter. I have an Instagram, but I'm very new to Instagram, so I don't even remember what I am on Instagram. Probably Rem Wigmore. That's who I am at most places. What projects do I have going on right now? Well, I've got Wolfpack out with my publisher at the moment. By the time this comes out, I have a little... I was big into gothics, and I wrote a little vampire novella a creepy little gothic vampire novella, which, if this is in October, I will have sent it to at least one press, so that will either come out from some kind of small press within the next few years, or else self-publish it a little bit after that, and that's what I'm up to. I have a novelette coming out in November, I think, from Victoria University Press, which is very exciting because that's one of those generally more like literary presses here in New Zealand. And I have a novella called Basil in the Wild, a novelette called Basil in the Wild coming out in their Middle Distance anthology. And Basil in the Wild is this really gay, nice story about like a shepherd who meets a wild man of the woods and the things they have in common as like outsiders, and it's sort of this commentary on neurodiversity and like being gay as hell, basically. So I'm really excited for that one too.
Excellent.
All my work is queer as hell. Most of my work, especially like Foxhunt onwards, is almost entirely about trans and non-binary people, and it's great, and I am never going back.
Awesome. Yeah, I want a future that includes all of us too.
Yeah.
You know?
I want worlds where we all make it. Because I think we can all make it.
That's right.
Radical inclusion, right?
Yeah.
That's part of Solarpunk.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right, so thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you coming on here and talking with us about WorldCon and your career and your new book and being non-binary and all of that kind of stuff. That was fantastic.
And, you know, down with capitalism, which is always good.
Oh, yeah, how did I skip that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. Like, both my gender identity and my ferociously anti-capitalist nature are very important to my work.
Awesome.
So.
I mean, that's like my favorite thing, so I don't know how I skipped that.
Definitely please stay in touch because this was a real pleasure and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm looking forward to like looking at finding your book as well. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the chats. Thank you for the bants.
Okay, and that was our interview with Rem Wigmore. But before we continue on, we want to remind you that if you like what we're doing, don't forget to share our podcast with your friends on Facebook or Twitter. Call them up and tell them this is the best podcast I've ever heard in my life. You could also rate or review us anywhere that you find podcasts. If you really, really, really like what we're doing, you can help support us on patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. And we also have a Ko-fi account. That's Kofi. If you don't want to send us, like a monthly donation to us, Ko-fi is kind of like a one-time thing. I think you can do monthly ones there too. I'm not actually sure.
You can, yeah. It's I think we have to sign up for that, but but for now, yeah, if you just want to spot us a couple bucks, Ko-fi's the way to do it. Is that also kofi.com/ifthisgoeson?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I believe so. You can just go on Ko-fi and just search If This Goes On and we'll pop up. So I know that because I have done that. And, if you do want to support us monthly on Patreon, we've got a bunch of different stuff going on there. We're starting up a Discord. We've got discounts to the Rambo School for Wayward Writers. I've been doing 5-minute book reviews, and a lot of them have been about our guest books, actually. So if you like what you hear on the interview and you're wondering a little bit more about what the book is like, I often talk about that over there, along with some other books that I've been reading. There's archived podcasts from back in the day on there, all kinds of stuff. So you can go on there and get any of that for $2 a month.
There you go.
All right. So now that part is over, Diane, takeaways from the interview.
I really like Rem. I think that we would get along famously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that I hope that they stay in touch for sure, because, yeah. Natural allies on a lot of levels, I think. And I liked how bubbly and excited they got talking about what they were doing. It really is hard for those of us in Canada. And so since it clearly is the same way in New Zealand, it's cool that they felt comfortable enough to do that, right? Because we get shut down a lot, especially growing up. We get oh, you shouldn't talk about yourself quite so long. So it's cool that they were able to get excited and wave their own flag. And that's, and I love it, because when you're excited about that, you get other people excited too. And they go, oh yeah, maybe it worked on me, right? I'm on Amazon right now. Actually, I'm on
Queen of Swords. Yeah.
Right, because I'm at Queen of Swords Press, and I am going to pick myself up a copy of this book because this sounds great.
Yeah, no, it was, I quite enjoyed it. I didn't know, this is one of those situations where I somewhat know the publisher, actually know her through Kat. And
right.
She just emailed me out of the blue one day, hey, would you like to interview Rem? And I was like, well, the craziness going on with everybody on the podcast right now. I was like, maybe, yep. I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen, and we're still trying to get Graham on, and then I read the book, and I was like, okay, well, this just has got to happen at some point sooner than later.
Perfect. And I'm glad that, you asked me, because, yeah, this is great. This was good.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I was like, yeah, this is definitely got to be a Diane interview for sure. I also like continuing this international perspective that we have going on.
I really hope we get that opportunity. Yeah, it's really been enlightening and interesting. And I like to think that we're in the process of introducing our audience into things they otherwise wouldn't have read.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking about it the other day, and, and even earlier when we were talking to Rem, we've had someone from Africa on, Italian on, we've had now New Zealander on. We're just hitting all of these areas. I never expected to interview anybody from any of these places,
Yeah.
But it's been great. And it's been interesting to hear about the publishing as well, the publishing world, and how everyone is affected differently in all these different places.
I found that very informative too. It's good for me in terms of moral support, I have to say. It's so hard when it's not just being in Canada, it's being in Western Canada.
Yeah.
Right? If I were in Central Canada, I would have much more access to that whole, metropolis market area there, people traveling back and forth across the border all the time. But here, there's much more distance, and it feels much more difficult to connect with anybody. And the fact that there are other people who are having the same struggles, if not worse struggles, makes me at least feel like, okay, I'm not in the fight alone. Maybe the rest of us should get together and do the Not American Market Publishing Company or something.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, and there's so many things to talk about with them, and I'd suggest everybody go out and purchase the book. It was a very good read. I did enjoy it, and for as much as we talk about Solarpunk, I have not read much Solarpunk. It was just great to see a vision of the future that wasn't horrible for once.
Yeah, I think we need that. We've had lots of cautionary tales at this point, and some people took cliff notes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They went, oh yeah, this sounds like, yeah. Now what we need is hopeful futures where people can also take notes and start building towards them.
Yeah, and it just goes to prove that you don't need a horrible environment or setting, I guess, for there to be conflict enough to write a novel. You can have conflict between people in a world that's not falling apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can. Actually, I'm reminded, okay, some Anne McCaffrey books have not aged well, but I remember how influential the Pern series was to me, and I didn't think about it afterwards until I read Todd McCaffrey's biography of his mother, Dragon Rider, and he was talking about the fact that it was very important to Anne McCaffrey not to have religion or war in Pern. And I hadn't realized until he wrote that and I read this that was the case. And I thought about it. I'm like, there isn't any. But there's still lots of interesting conflict, and there's still a lot of great story. Those books, I've read them for years. I still read them. So, yeah, you don't have to have the world falling to shit, for sure.
Right. Interesting for sure. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. Thanks everybody for listening. That's the main interview. However, we do have another segment coming up. Next is our Spec Fic Partisan audio column by Rick Claypool, author of Mold Farmer and Leech Girl Lives, and he's going to talk about politics. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you again next time.
I'm tired. It's October. I want to watch horror movies. But the truth is, there are some horror I just can't take right now. Plague horror, overtly political horror, horror where the victims are kids. The parts of my brain where these fears live are already overstimulated. What I'm looking for is an escape. I'm not saying we should ignore systemic racism, the attacks on women's rights, the climate crisis, worker exploitation, our broken democracy, the COVID pandemic, and so on. What I'm saying is, for me, I am better able to show up for the things I care about when I have a chance to withdraw and recharge. And if you feel like you're coming up against the edge of burnout, I recommend you make an effort to spend some time with the things that help you recharge too. And don't sabotage your recharging by making yourself feel guilty about it. Anyway, it's October, and there's a certain kind of horror I come back to again and again when what I want is distraction. My horror comfort food, if you will. Horror self-care. Self-scare? Sorry. Anyway, it's not the award winners, and it's not the slashers, and it's not even the horror comedies. It's not really even a category that anyone else that I know recognizes in a consistent way. Basically, it's the weird-ass horror movies with bizarre creatures and lots of obviously fake practical effects. There's just something about movies that are simultaneously ambitiously imaginative, yet lacking the budget for or are plainly uninterested in realistic effects. So here are my favorites. First, Troll 2. The bizarre, convoluted plot follows a hyperactive nightmare logic, and the goblin effects are fake in a way that's both laughable and creepy somehow. Now, of course, this is a cult classic, and, I was so excited about rewatching this one and withdrawing with it. I actually rewatched it shortly before speaking to you, and it turns out this one actually got a little less fun than it used to be, in part because, the horde of middle-aged rural white men who are most of the trolls in human form, they have a new, unwelcome layer of menace in the post-Trump era. So that's something to be aware of. But, next up, I don't think you can talk about fake gore without bringing up Dead Alive, which, in my opinion, is the essential early Peter Jackson movie. The blood is so fake looking in this movie, and the zombies are so gross in a way that obviously involves heavy amounts of rubber body parts. It doesn't matter. It's over-the-top, goopy fun that takes the goofy grossness Jackson played with in his first movie, Bad Taste, to an extreme. All right, next. A deep cut. Winter Beast. All one word, Winter Beast. Where the other movies I've mentioned have crazy plots, this one barely has a plot at all. Mostly, it's just a series of increasingly weird, low-budget, stop-motion monster attack scenes strung together between awkward scenes about mysterious deaths at a mountain lodge. The extremely catchy theme song, by the way, is part of what holds this movie together. Also, I have to say there really isn't anything especially wintry about it at all, so, it's just as much a mid-autumn beast as it is a winter beast, really. Finally, a new favorite, Psycho Goreman. This just came out last year, and it's a lot more polished than the other movies I've mentioned. But the Canadian filmmaking crew, Astron 6's devotion to practical effects is on full display here. Now, there's all kinds of things besides the eponymous Psycho Goreman, and they are all obviously fake, and they are all awesome. If I was 9, I'd be begging for toy versions of these for Christmas, especially Biocop. Poor Biocop. By the way, the fake Biocop trailer that Astron 6 also made several years ago prior to this is extremely worth a watch. Now, I know there are a lot of movies that I could have mentioned here but didn't. I just didn't have time. And I'm sure there are also plenty that I don't even know exist. So if you have a favorite, I would love to hear about it, and you can message me on Twitter at WeirdStrug. Now, I hope you get to enjoy whatever kinds of horror movies you like this October, and I do hope they leave you feeling recharged for the struggles ahead. Until then, I will see you on the internet.
If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited by Alan Bailey, with production by Sound Maiden. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, additional music is by Christopher Snydrowski, and outro music by Sable Aradia. Intro by Dave Robison. A special thanks to our guest interviewer, Rem Wigmore. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you again soon.